As I mentioned to you earlier in the seminar, we'll be talking about the real stars of this presentation, that is the 5 subsets of birds that'll come to your backyard. They are the large-billed birds, the small perching birds, the arboreal birds, the woodpecker family, and the grassland birds. As you see here, this is definitely one of the large-billed birds, and we like to call it the cardinal family of birds. As you look at the cardinal here, this is a male cardinal. You can note that by the bright red coloring and the red conical shaped bill, and you can see it has that nice crest or tuft to it as well. One of the things about this bird is it's probably one of the most recognizable birds. So as you start to learn your birds, this is probably one of the first birds you'll recognize, and it's so recognizable that in fact 6 states have it as their state bird. This bird, you can see that beautiful red coloring to it, and that coloring in the male is probably designed to attract predators, and that male can fly away from the nest to protect while the mother protects the young. And speaking of the female cardinal, the female cardinal you can see is the same size, same silhouette, has that same red conical shaped beak to it, same tuft there. But as you look at the coloration of the female, it's a little bit more of a muted color, a little bit more camouflaged, and as the male is flying away, she can stay at home at the nest and sort of protect the young from predators. And as we've been talking about both the male and the female, you're probably wondering what the young look like. And so I have a picture here of a young juvenile, and as you see, if I go back to the female, you'll notice that they look very similar. And how do you tell them apart in the wild? And one of the ways to do that is the red beak that the female has is the same as the male we talked about earlier, but the juvenile, as you can see, doesn't have that. They have that sort of blackish beak to it that the young have. And this is probably, this is taking place in the summertime, this picture, and this is one of the spring young that has grown up. And it's going to be a male. You can tell from the red markings that it's starting to transfer into the male cardinal that you're used to seeing. The next bird that we have here to show you is the rose-breasted grosbeak. This is one of my favorite birds that comes to my backyard. Cool thing about this bird is it got its name from the grossly large beak. How many people here eat cherries? I know I do, and as I've take a bite of a cherry, often I'll get a pit and I'll bite down on that, and it hurts. These birds actually peel away the cherry to get at that nut that hurts you and I when we bite down on it, and they actually crack it open to eat the nut meat or the endosperm that's inside. These birds will readily come to the feeder, and they come up from the south to breed here, and the males come up here a little bit early to try to find a good nesting spot to attract females. When they come up early, the food sources are scarce, and so they'll readily come to a feeder, and you can see this beautiful bird. The female has a very similar silhouette to her. You can see the brown and white streaking that this bird has, and that little kind of white eye line over her is a great way to tell this bird apart with that same grosbeak silhouette. Another grosbeak that for you people who've been feeding birds for quite a long time are probably used to seeing this bird 10, 12 years ago. Recently, it's been more difficult to see this bird. The evening grosbeak is a bird that is resident to Canada and will come down to visit us in the wintertime. It primarily feeds off of the coniferous trees and the seeds, and when those foraging seeds are low in Canada in the wintertime, it'll make its way down here to look for alternative food sources. But with the climate change happening and warmer weather moving further north, we're seeing a little bit change in birds that do come to see us. So a bird from Canada may not come down quite as often, and birds from a little bit further south that we didn't used to see, we are now able to see a little bit more often than we used to. The blue jay, I love to show this picture in the seminars because it usually strikes emotions within the crowd here, and it draws both good and bad emotions, and it draws bad emotions from people. The people that dislike the birds is generally because they are very picky at the feeders. They'll sometimes push other birds away, and I would say to you that that goes to my point that I made earlier, that birds are discriminating eaters. Blue jays know what they need to survive, know what type of seed that they want, and they go ahead and eat that, and they pick the other seeds out. The reason people love these birds is because as you look at these pictures, they have beautiful blue markings and blue and white markings, and are just a gorgeous bird to visually look at. For these birds, we have a Cardinal mix. It is 50% sunflower seeds. And as you take a look at it here, you can see it has black striped seed, black oil, safflower, steam flake corn, and buckwheat in it, all of which are hard-shelled seeds that are very easy for those large-billed birds to crack open, but very difficult for other birds to crack open. And the assumption that is being made when this mix was designed is that you already have a general purpose feeder somewhere in your yard. This is designed specifically to segregate out the subset of the large-billed birds. So you've heard me talk about two different sunflowers. You're probably wondering what the difference is. So I have some pictures here to show you. The black striped seed here is the original sunflower seed grown in North America. You can see the striping on the seed, how it got its name. It was then brought over to Europe, Eastern Europe, and eventually Russia, where it was developed into the oil crop black oil sunflower seed that you see today, and is widely used as a cooking oil. The black oil type sunflower seed has a much softer shell versus the black stripe seed, which has a much harder shell. So which do the birds prefer? Any bird can eat the black oil type sunflower, but the birds that we just discussed, those large-billed birds, the 747s in the backyard, they have that large conical shaped beak, can easily crack open this large black striped sunflower, and is a seed of choice for them.
Well, good morning and welcome to my backyard, or as we like to say here at Aspen Song, welcome to my sanctuary. I'm in the process of feeding the choir, and it's a beautiful spring day in May, and there's lots of bird song around me, and I see some birds anxiously waiting for me to get out of the way so that they can get to the feeders. You're looking at one of about 6 or 7 feeders that I have set out at this time of the year. One of the reasons I do that, we call this our sanctuary. Scientists would call this a food patch, meaning that many of the local neighborhood seed-eating birds have discovered that on a regular basis there's seed available to them here, so they come to enjoy what we're putting out for them. And one of the, if you're like me in your backyard bird feeding hobby, one of my goals is always to have lots of birds in my yard. And the simplest way to accomplish that is to have multiple feeding stations. Now maybe you can't get over the top like I am with 6 or 7 feeders out, but having multiple feeding stations is a great way to attract more birds. If I look at, say, any typical feeder, here's an example of a tube feeder, I have room for 4 birds to be feeding at a time. That means that the others are going to have to wait their turn. Some species tend to dominate over other species, and even within a species, certain individuals are dominant, will chase others away. So this is a 4-bird opportunity. If I have something like a platform feeder, here's an example of a recycled plastic one, and you see another one over here. Again, still in a case like this, we're looking at 4 or 5 birds at the most that are going to be at the feeder at any given time. So my thought is, put lots of feeding stations out and give multiple birds an opportunity to be all eating at the same time. If I'm going to do that, if you're going to do that, then one of the things that I would strongly recommend is that you not put the same types of feeders out in multiple locations, but you mix it up with different feeder types and different seed mixes, so that you can attract also a variety, as well as a lot of birds, a variety of birds. When we look at the seed-eating birds of the backyard in the northeastern United States, we see 5 distinct subsets, and Each of them has different behavioral characteristics, different body shapes and sizes, different food preferences that we've discovered over many years of testing different seeds and so on. So it's possible to set up feeding stations that are kind of designed to be the best they can be for a particular group of birds. And today we're talking about the large-billed birds of the backyard, the cardinal family of birds. The common birds that one would expect to see in that group would be blue jays, northern cardinal, rose-breasted grosbeak in the spring and summer, evening grosbeaks possibly in the wintertime. Those are the common birds that fit into that group. These are all birds of a larger size with very large conical bills that spend most of their time foraging in conifer trees for the seeds that are contained within pine cones, and they readily come to feeders in our backyards. Aspen Song has a mix that I'm about to put in this feeder that is called Cardinal food, and it's made up of black striped sunflower, black oil sunflower, some crimped corn, some safflower, and some buckwheat. The concept behind this mix is that this is a coarse textured blend of thick shelled seeds for large-billed birds. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create something that these birds have the tool, the large bill, to be able to get to the nut meat, the food that's inside the seed, and possibly exclude some of the other birds, so maybe the finches and the native sparrows and some of those species are going to go to one of the other feeders in my yard, and I'm able to set something up unique for the large-billed birds. Now, besides having a big bill, they're also larger birds relative to the finches and the sparrows and the arboreal birds. And so, you know, one of my concerns is always a typical tube feeder. If you look at the relationship between where the bird is going to perch and where it's going to have to get its head and bill in order to get the seed out, this really doesn't exactly work for them. If you like tube feeders, and I really do enjoy having tube feeders, and I have several behind you there, adding a seed tray to the bottom allows the larger bird to position himself so that he can get that seed out of there. But one of the other things about these bigger birds is that they weigh a bit more, and if this is a hanging feeder and one of these birds flies in and lights on, oftentimes it's swinging and pitching from the momentum from their weight. So if I'm setting up a feeding station for the cardinals of my yard, I like to have something that's pole or post mounted like you see here. I like to have something like a platform feeder. This is a covered platform feeder that allows them to position themselves relative to the food and be comfortable in their feeding. And so this is really an invitation. This is the way I set the table for the cardinals and the grosbeaks in my backyard. It's sturdy, so when they land it's not going to move. It allows them to position themselves easily relative to the seed and to consume a mix like cardinal food with those thick, large seeds in it. You can see that I have a squirrel baffle here because I do have lots of squirrels in my backyard as well. This is a platform feeder that I particularly like. I like the fact that it's covered, offers some protection to the feeding birds and also the protection to the seed, not getting it overly wet. And it's all metal. Everything about it is metal, so that in fact it can't be chewed by squirrels if in fact they could get past the baffle. So this is how I set up a feeding station for the cardinals. So looking to attract cardinals and grosbeaks to your yard, consider putting up a new feeding station separate from your feature feeder with something like Aspen Song Premium or Ultimate Blend in it. Put it in a platform feeder that's sturdy for them to alight on, and chances are you'll enjoy many beautiful views of these amazing birds coming to a feeder like this with Aspen Song Cardinal food, a mix that we've designed specifically for them.